Welcome everyone to episode 5 of LoopStudio Talks. I'm Eduardo Vargas. Today I'm joined by Tiago, one of our tech leads. How's everything, Tiago?
What's up? Everything's great. I'm really happy to be here today. We have so much to discuss. I'm just looking forward to jumping into all the topics we have today.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's good because Tiago started working with us almost 5 years ago already.
Yeah, it's almost 6.
Almost 6. A huge career with LoopStudio. I'm proud of that. So let's start with something not always talk about. How does a tech lead contribute during the sales process?
Well, it's been actually something quite new for us, for the whole tech area itself. I remember the days when we had Andy, our now chief of growth, joined. And it was way more, let's say, fun but chaotic. And we had like so many leads coming in, and for us developers and myself at the time I was just probably a mid developer at the stage, and we had the new client like right in front of us, and we needed to face a challenge. And that's an experience that helped us grow a lot and face like difficult circumstances, but we also learned that we needed to be more involved in the first stages of meeting a client and being able to determine if that client would be a fit and also give them more confidence about what they were having to do. They have different sorts of challenges. We have worked with so many different business areas, and it, it's become more and more key for us, especially jumping into cybersecurity, that we understand their needs and what standards do they need us to hold. So for me personally, it was just a really, really learning curve to start going to more and more introductory calls with sales and understand the problems from scratch. And also be able to say no, because sometimes we don't have a fit and we try to work with products that are not only a fit technically, but people that we trust, they have a real product that will scale and will be a source for us to build a partnership long term.
That's awesome. But you mentioned that you work in these proposals and you help Andy to work on that. But do you join Andy in these calls with the prospects or is just on the proposals?
Yes, most of the times we do. It depends really on what context Andy has and also the complexity. I'm not all like in every sales calls because that's not my job and it would be possible to do so and not really worthy. But when we know we have something and we know they demand like a certain standard, they know we want a big team, they know we have certain requirements that they need to trust us more technically. So I try to give that trust in the calls and lead them to then the follow up, which is very important. It's not like, okay, we met Tiago, we met Marcos, the CTO, now we are jumping on the project. No, we give a direction of where the next step is. That next step is usually a proposal where we try to estimate their effort and especially what skills and what kind of team they need. We have different types of leads, like we have people that are building an MVP sometimes, so we need to build a team from scratch. And many of the times we join existing teams, so we also need to understand the culture they have and how our developers can join that environment.
It's awesome because it's funny sometimes doing these questions because most of the time I'm also involved in these processes. So I joined Tiago or Marcos in one of these meetings. But something that I always think and people ask me and I wanna ask you is how do you balance the feasibility with what the client wants to hear and also, like, it's easier to have a conversation with a non-technical founder or with a technical founder.
Okay, I will address the first one because every client wants to hear that you will do everything in 2 days and it will be very low budget. So that's the dream of everyone. But as we grow as a business and we know more, let's call them serious clients, they expect more quality than really just delivering. But in every case, you need to explain, and you need to also understand if they really do need something very solid, or if they need more like a proof of concept that will help them scale. But everyone wants to hear that something is fast and it's also cheap. Even though we can manage that, we are more focused, or we try to get more to the clients that want the long-term quality product. So in the first place, it's a matter of fit, and then it's a matter of understanding and explaining them why we got to this dimension, and to give them confidence that even though they may hear some other agency can do it in half of the time, they probably need to take into consideration other things. So that's the first one. And the second part of the question, like, is it more, is it easier for me to deal with a non-technical customer or with a technical one? I would say it depends on uh, how technical they are and what do they expect from us. For example, today we have a lot of AI products, so sometimes they expect AI experts. In those cases can be more difficult to navigate for me, for example, as a frontender. And many other technical people are very light with what we do day to day, so it's easier to communicate. So I would say it varies a lot depending on the challenge they have.
That's that's really interesting. Then, like, uh, after you build the proposal, after you have the conversation, what are some common mistakes in a technical proposals that don't involve the developers early?
I would say the ones that in the first place don't involve them at all. So imagine you saying, okay, this will take 3 months, and then we do it. And we find out it takes 6 months. And we face issues with the timelines. We may encounter some friction between the developers or the project managers that are working closer with the client. So I would say the earlier you join that stage, the better. And also how serious you take it. Like, we can ask any developer to estimate an effort, and then we really value the production, how we evaluate projects and how we try to estimate it. It's not the same effort as estimating like a task in the project. Even though you should take that seriously, this is much more analytical. You need to discover the product itself. And something that I consider very, very important here is to also be able to tell the people you have in front, do you really need this part? Or are you really aiming to do this? Or to propose different ideas? That doesn't mean you will throw their business down. It means you are trying to understand what is their problem and what is their users' problems. Because they may think, okay, I'm meeting with a software agency, they are coders, they are designers, I'm just going to tell them, okay, do this. And many of the times they in the way start finding out that we can help them a lot with what they are actually trying to solve in the market. And I think that's the most important, and for me the better, or the part that I enjoy most.
That's something really good that you mentioned because it's something that it's in us, like how we want to be like a great sidekick, a great partner, really understand the business of our customers, not just provide services, also understand what they want to solve deep. We mentioned like at Loop we talk about technical, like what does it mean to you in practice?
Well, it's quite connected to this, but it's not the same being able to estimate an effort and saying, okay, this will take 6 months. Because if you have the budget, you can afford to imagine something taking 6 months. But the same kind of investment, it can tell you, okay, I want this for tomorrow, and I have a demo, I have to run this. So in those stages, we need to have a team, and we do have a team that can deal with the situations and that is able to say either no, I can't, or this would mean that we will have to delay this, and this, or that technically this will impact this in this way, and we face these risks. Are you willing to deal with those risks later? Are we willing to reach the demo? Okay, let's do it. But I think it's not only like the sales or the proposal, is having a team that understands that software is a very, let's say, moving and flexible industry, and we need that industry from them and from the clients. So communication is just key here.
That's that's incredible, and I think it's part of our values, the communication and how we work on with that honesty and sharing everything. But as a technical leader, as a tech lead in Loop Studio, you are not just working doing sales. You work in projects. You work in interviews. You work in different scenarios also as a mentor. You cross-path in different areas at the company. So let's talk code. What's unique about working on a front end in cybersecurity products?
Well, I have the privilege of being, I think, one of the first that jumped into a cyber project. And at that time, we didn't know what to expect from that industry, but we had a great relationship with the client, and we still do actually. So in that scenario, we made the greatest effort to build a UI that was eye-catching and really interactive, and we managed to accomplish that, and that's a good part of why they found success in that. But as we were evolving and getting more and more into the space, we found out that the problem is almost the same in the different type of problems the cybersecurity space is solving. And that problem is, okay, I have a cybersecurity team, or I have analysts, or I have a functioning analytic system that can detect this, and this, but I don't know how to show it. I have like a mess of data, like this raw stuff. I don't know where it comes from, or I don't know how to deal with this. So in the first place, the design team has been doing a great job in actually understanding those situations and putting up the right designs and comprehensive designs for sometimes somewhat technical users and other times non-technical users, which is amazing and is what they value most. And as a front-end developer, when you receive those designs, you say, okay, I can do this. And then you're faced with some of the data and you think you have to be really, really flexible sometimes because the data you get, it doesn't fit some of the designs. And that's not fault of the designers or anyone. It's just the way it is. So you have to have a lot of communication between development and designs to navigate those situations. Let's say you have a pie chart, like I would expect a pie chart to have like 4 or 5 categories. And you get data for 25 categories. Okay, I can show this. We need to figure out a way with the design team to show this data in another way that is more useful to the user.
That's really interesting, and I think yes, even inside teams, you need to be well communicated, design, technology, product, and customers. What technical decisions have been key in recent projects?
Well, in my case, I lean on really building design systems and component libraries as much as we can, and as much as we can customize them. One of the recent problems was we had to build one from scratch, but on top of an existing library. So we understood that they had a big problem on how their UI was connected and how it was inconsistent in their design they wanted to implement. So we needed to build a layer on top of that. That's one example. I can give you more around maybe more functional stuff like I don't want to get too technical, but for example, caching data, like being able to keep the data in the browser without having to have like a lot of requests for an API, which can be very expensive. Or another very common and useful implementation we do and is asked to us a lot is being able to share like a whole link which contains a lot of parameters and data in the URL that will allow you to share. Let's say you're an analyst and need to share a thread to one of your partners. Okay, instead of telling that partner, go through this, and this flow, you just share the link and they get there. That's one nice way to improve that UX that so many products of these kinds need because they need to be quick to resolve threats. They are many times under threat and they need to resolve it fast.
That's impressive because sometimes people associate front end just with the visual and mockupping, but it really involves like the conscious of taking decisions that they will impact in the business of our customers, taking care of the requests, taking care of everything, and it's a huge decision. So that's amazing. Going to our question, Tiago, UX is in technical pros can be taught. How does frontend help to reduce friction in complex flows?
I think this is more really an design issue first, but the processes we have built demand that you communicate a lot with the designers. So we cannot decide, or this is interesting because there is a concept that frontenders sometimes design or implement on top of what they see. I'm a strong believer that that should never be the case. Like, I should never do a UI that the designer is not aware of. Even though I may can or I could improvise or I can find a way. When I do or when I find that someone does, I stand for the designers. So okay, we need to meet to talk about this stuff. Do you agree? Is this a good UX? It can be something really important like a whole flow or a silly thing like a color. I would like to, I do validate if the designer agrees that that color is better for that place. And I think that's the role of the front end in the UX, and not saying, okay, I did this because it's better. Maybe it is better, but let the designers know what it is.
Here again, we are back in something that you mentioned that back forward. We need the communication between developers and designers. It's important. No one could take decision from each other. It's part of the relationship and the good work that we provide. So, any tools or approaches you consider must-haves today? Bro?
Well, there's a lot of noise in the AI space, of course. We can get into that for sure. Tools maybe for the front end. Um, I do specialize in UI in the UI side, and I believe that if you want to build a scalable and good-looking front end, you need to really be sure that you are precise and pixel perfect. So I use a lot of tools to measure the screen, to make sure the responsiveness is on point, color detection tools, like everything very precise, because when you have those foundational pieces in place, then building the whole application is easier. So for me, that's a key aspect.
That- That's awesome. Going, yeah, you mentioned something about AI, but it's not like you're working every day as an engineer in the trenches, but also you are really active, trying, getting deep with AI. You're active posting on LinkedIn about AI. So if someone wants to see their posts, go to Tiago's LinkedIn. But what impact is AI having on your work?
I think a lot. Ever since GPT-3 came out, I started trying stuff like debugging code, pivoting problems, and the more and more the models advance, the more you are relying on them to integrate into your workflow. I would say today, me personally, I use Cursor, which has become the default editor for many developers, and also use GPT as an outsourced platform to debug different problems. They sometimes have more advanced models, especially on the paid plans. Every, like everything is changing so fast that you never know which is the best model or the best uh, workflow or alternative. What I think is important is that you try to integrate one of these tools, the one you feel most comfortable with, but make sure you dominate that and it doesn't dominate you. That's why I'm saying there's a lot of noise in the space of, for example, people being able to launch products without coding knowledge, and that's a thing. But what is more important is actually making those products last. So, yes, it's true. Maybe it's easier to get to something today, but the real challenge starts when you have to deal with a 2-year long code base and you have to solve problems there. So And that's where AI sometimes is not really, really helpful today. But I strongly think that I don't like the term, for example, vibe coding or manual coding. I think you should get to a place where everything is a mix of both, but never get the code out of your side. If you integrate a code into your code base that you wouldn't type manually, don't do it. Review everything, and I don't care if 80% of the code is cursor or whatever. I care it looks good, and that's only possible when you know how to orientate the models and how to orientate the technology.
Talking about mixes, how do you balance speed and quality when using tools like Cursor, GitHub Copilot, or whatever?
Well, I think they are very useful to do the repetitive tasks you used to type, like finishing. Then I don't want to get like too much into the code itself, but for example, finishing variable names or like space in the code, like very silly stuff. Yeah, it just does it automatically. But also for starting let's say the template of an implementation, the starting pieces, you tell the model, okay, I am going to build something like this. The problem you have is when you tell it, do this and do this, all this. And that's when it gets a mess. But when you tell them your plan and how are you planning to follow up, and you are really, really precise and deep into what you're going to build, and you especially don't expect something given to you, but something planned and sketched for you, I think that's the key. And that's where it shines, and that's where you really, really are more productive. Otherwise, you will spend the 80% of your time fixing the 20% the AI did wrong.
In in this like AI that is in the everyone's world, is there anything about this trend that excites you or maybe worries you?
Yeah, there's a lot. And it's like it's coming to every one of us. Like every day we change our mind. Like, is this ending us? Is this boosting us? What is happening? But I think we need to calm down and understand that right now each has actually made us better. But yes, I am excited of a lot of things that are still developing, and I still find myself doing repetitive stuff that maybe I don't have to do in the future. So I'm also seeing other products launched with AI by non-developers, and I don't think that's negative precisely. What I talk about often is how that is not real building of a product, but I don't think that it's very positive that some people is able to launch something and to validate that idea in the market, and that idea will eventually come to us to really build it further. So that is very exciting. What worries me is the sugar developers that are dealing with this, because we didn't have this when we were growing, let's say. So we needed to face problems in a way that made us more resilient to frustration, and that led us to like dig much deeper into forums, GitHub issues, or many, many pages, and even books sometimes. And now, if you're learning and you have a cursor or GPT and you can say, okay, fix this, it's very difficult for a junior developer to acquire that skill of learning such facility of solving something for themselves.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And every day is changing, so we don't know what will happen tomorrow. We know what we have today, and we need to work with that. So, and it's exciting how it change. Sometimes it's a little bit creepy. It could scare you, but I think it's awesome. Tiago, it was amazing to have you here. You had a lot to share. Thanks so much. I think this really shows us how tech and business are more connected than people might think, and how developers and designers are connected, and we don't think like we don't need design, the developer could work on that. We need to trust in everyone's work. So it was amazing.
Of course, thank you so much, Edu. I hope we can do this again sometime. So thank you for
And thanks everyone listening or watching. This was Loop Studio Talks. See you next time.